as above, so below. Be ye in the world, but not of this world. And these are very lofty phrases that we may have heard, most of us have, but may have wondered what these phrases really mean to us in our lives. And more particularly, how are we using them in our lives? So to me, they mean bringing heavenly ideas, higher truths, deep and profound spiritual concepts into our earthly, worldly experiences. And by the way, I changed the talk. This is not the one that's in your bulletin. This one is living in heaven, because I really felt like living in heaven this week and what that really means in our lives. So, living in these experiences with all the dust, the grime, and the grit of these experiences that can come with them, they are transformed into heavenly ones when we adjust our thinking. So, a youth church teacher was giving a lesson on Sunday morning to a group of grade school children. When she asked them, if I sold my house and my car, had a big garage sale, and gave all my money to the church, would that get me in heaven? No, the children said. How about if I cleaned the church every day and mowed the yard and had everything neat and clean? Would that get me into heaven? No, they said again. Well then, if I was kind to animals and gave candy to all the children and helped the needy, now that would get me into heaven. No, they said. So she continued. How can I get into heaven? And little Johnny in the first row said, you gotta die. You gotta be dead. You gotta be dead. Well, in religious science, new thought from the mouth of Babe, right? We don't gotta be dead in order to get into heaven. But we do have to believe that in order to experience the kingdom of heaven, which is a conscious connection with the God presence within each and every one of us, we do need to let some things die. We need to let go of that which does not allow us in consciousness to experience this kingdom. Ernest Holmes wrote in Science of Mind, behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, but this kingdom must be recognized. The recognition is a mental act. It's through our thinking. What are we thinking? That's what we're going to kind of get into today so that we can have these heavenly experiences. We must realize that whatever keeps us from recognizing, complying with the laws of the kingdom in our life, and we might even go so far as to say, we need to clear out hell so that heaven can reign. And we know this is all taking place in our thinking, in our minds, right? What is our hell? What is our hell? I want to quote something I found online from Pope John Paul, where he said this, and this is, I'm quoting him. Heaven is neither an abstraction nor a physical place in the clouds, but a living and personal relationship of union with the Holy Trinity. And here's another quote from that same article. Hell is not a punishment imposed externally by God, but the condition resulting from attitudes and actions which people adopt in this life. More than a physical place, hell is a state of those who freely and definitely separate themselves from God, the source of all life and joy. Separation again. So I want to talk this morning about two ways that we can experience hell. And I know that you all will relate to this because we're all humans. And it's the hell of separation from the source of all love and joy, all of that love and joy. And it comes with two blocks. And if we were to chisel those blocks freely away, we would wind up with fear and blame. Fear and blame. So, letting go of fear, which is, we can go in and out of that. But as long as we're conscious of it, it's been said that there really are only two emotions, and I truly believe this. Course in Miracles says this very clearly. It's either love or fear. Everything falls under love, everything falls under fear. There's nothing like in between. Everything else falls under those two, not real qualities, but ways of being in the world. Marianne Williamson wrote, "Love in your mind produces love in your life. This is the meaning of heaven. Fear in your mind produces fear in your life, and this is the meaning of hell," right? It's been said that you can let fear run your life because if you do, you won't live. You can't, no, you can't. You can't let fear run your life because if you do, you will not live. Living in fear is not living life full out. If you are letting fear run your life, you certainly are not creating heaven here on earth. So this morning, I'm going to ask you, how is fear preventing you from living? How is it preventing you from creating heaven on earth, right here and right now? And what is it fear of? Not safe in the world? Won't have enough? Afraid to connect with others? Afraid to let love in? Afraid to speak your truth? Afraid to shine your light? And right now I know many people who are deeply in fear of contacting this coronavirus, this COVID thing, that they don't leave their house. They listen to the news and they are afraid to leave their homes. This is living in complete fear. And while I am saying be careful and do what you are pulled to do in life, I don't judge anyone on this, but I just feel that there is so much fear. There's always been fear with the news, but now it's really out there. So it is up to us. We say when the light show is the light bearers, it is up to us to center, to align with that divine light so that we can live and show and be heaven on earth right here and give hope to those who cannot. It's time to clear it all out no matter what your fear is so that heaven can reign. A little child was lost in the woods for several days, and eventually a man discovered her. And she was sitting under a tree waiting to be found. He said, "Weren't you afraid?" And she said, "No." He said, "How could you not be afraid?" She said, "Because I know that God is here." And he said, "How do you know that?" And she said, "Because I'm here." That's out of the mouth of babes, right? I know that God is here because I am here. Well, that's a great way to just live life, right? And how about this statement? Whenever we get into fear about anything, I know that God is here because I am here, so I release the fear and live. I would just breathe that in. Let's try that one on for size. Let's take a moment to close our eyes and think about a fear that is holding you back. And look it in the eye and say in your mind, I know that God is here because I am here. So I release the fear and live. Yes. So our second block to creating heaven here on earth is another biggie. Blame. Letting go of blame. I know that when I did some really deep forgiveness work many years ago now, because I'm getting old, so that was many years ago, thank God it's behind me. When I say get thee behind me, Satan, I mean get thee behind me, all fear. Because once I release that, I release the need to blame something on someone else for my life. And I'm living in victim consciousness. So once we do the forgiveness work, blame doesn't have any place to fit. It's wonderful. I can tell you that, it's freeing. So there are two emotions and really just two ways that we can show up in life here with blame. And one is to continue the blaming game, or the other is to take responsibility of your life. No one else is going to be responsible. You are. George Bernard Shaw once said, liberty means responsibility. That is why most men and women dread it so. It means we got to take responsibility for our lives, not blame it on everything else. Blaming your surroundings, your circumstances, blaming your childhood. It keeps you stuck in hell. It doesn't do you any good. It does you harm. Whenever we look outside of ourselves to point a finger and say the problem is him or her, the target, this is the target, whatever the target is, we're shooting at the wrong target. Too often, we try to change the outer things instead of changing the inner things. And we know we can only truly change within ourselves if we want change on the outside. It's always going to be an inside job. It's not going to come from changing this, because still the same thinking is operating within us. Whenever we look outside of ourselves and point our finger like that, nothing will really happen. Nothing will happen. And sometimes, like if you're in a movie, here I have a story, let's do the movie story. The movies came to the city for the first time, and finally they arrived at a remote mining camp in the Rockies. The picture was announced and the tent was put up. The residents had never been to a movie before, you can imagine this. And these are all cowboys and miners, M-I-N-E-R-S, okay, those kind of miners in the coal mines. And at any given moment during this showing, when they first started to show this, there would be, if you remember the older movies, maybe you've seen the silent movies, this blood-curdling villain and always attacking this young maiden or whatever. While the cowboy in this particular tent movie theater, the cowboy in the front row pulled out his gun and fired 6 shots into the villain on the screen. Now, we can't do that today, of course. This is a minor, so use your imagination. So everybody laughed. They laughed at him. Because in those days, the gunshot really didn't mean much. And there were only a few bullet holes in the screen, and of course the picture went on the schedule because he's shooting at the screen. And why do we laugh at that cowboy? Because we know what he should have done. Instead of firing at the screen, he could have gone to where the projector was and turned it off. That's the cause. The projector is the cause. The screen is the circumstances. It's the outcome coming from the projector. History is filled with examples of people who have created heaven. But before we get into that, I want us to know that we need to change. We don't need to. We can choose to change our consciousness. And when we change our consciousness, it is like turning off the projector. And then the things happen that we want to happen. If you don't like the picture on the screen, change the reel. Change the reel. It's like TV. If you don't like what you're watching on TV, you can change the channel to something you do want to watch. So heaven is filled with examples of people who did take responsibility and lived heaven on this earth for themselves. And rather than blaming the circumstances, which we can all do, on others, here are just a few of the people. There's so many. A man named William Shakespeare, with only a grammar school education, wrote some of the greatest plays ever written. Did he let his lack of education stop him? Absolutely not. He took responsibility for his own experiences and allowed the divine flow of creativity to express through him. A man named Mozart began to compose music when he was 5 years old. And although he lived a hard life and was never really recognized while he was alive for his genius, he wrote so many unsurpassed pieces that it takes a catalog just to list the titles of his many, many pieces. And where did the music flow from? It flowed from within him. Thomas Edison was deaf and tossed out of public school after 3 months because the teacher said that it was impossible to teach him. Yet he was responsible for some of the biggest changes in a big way in our lives through his inventions. Did he retreat and blame this? Did he blame the teacher for stifling his creative genius? Of course he did not. He simply drew on the creative energy on which everything lives. We all have this within us, by the way. Moses, a shy man with little to no confidence and a speech impediment, inspired an entire nation to freedom, a new way of life. Did he blame his genetics for not giving him, his family for not giving him this empowerment, this self-confidence, or for nature for allowing him to have a speech impediment? He did not. He did not. But he inspired great many people because he got his direction from God. That's where he went. He went forward knowing he was inspired by the divine. And you might say that these people are geniuses, prophets, like a man named Jesus, who was just a carpenter's son, born in an obscure village in an obscure province, who went against the grain of his very own religion and changed the course of human events as we know it. Did he blame others? Did you ever hear him blame others? He did not. And this is for all of us, because these are not just prophets, great geniuses, but they all have, and many others, and as we do, this divinity within us to take responsibility for our thinking, our lives, what we're creating. Whatever it is, find the good in it, be thankful for it, and that's taking responsibility for it too. So this morning I ask you, where are you allowing blame to block you from creating heaven on earth in your own life? Are you blaming anyone for anything? Because it's a block. It's a block. To take full and complete responsibility for your experience and to create your own heaven on earth. Sometimes we have to leave relationships that are blocks to our really expressing our greatness. We need to leave jobs. We need to leave that which no longer serves us and take responsibility for our own lives and our own choices. And we can do it. But that fear sometimes keeps us from removing the block of whatever it is. And we can do it because what lies behind us and what lies before us are small matters compared to what lies within us. And that's from two different sources, Ralph Waldo Emerson or Oliver Wendell Holmes. I've heard them both credited with that. It's such a great, what lies behind us and what lies in front of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Creating heaven here on earth takes a radical commitment to a different way of being, a mental response to life that may be at odds with the way that we had been showing up. It takes releasing fear and blame once and for all to clear out those hell thoughts, if you will, and allow the heavenly thoughts to reign. Ernest Holmes, in one of his last talks given to a large group at Asilomar in California, said, "You find me 1,000 people in the world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as it is, and I'll myself live to see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth right here on earth, right here, right now." Well, he didn't live to see that. He didn't quite make that, and was still working on it. Ernest Holmes is gone from this life, but it's not too late to let heaven reign for each and every one of us, to align ourselves with the innate intelligence, the wisdom that flows through us, the power, the love that indwells us. And I'm quite sure that you have found your heaven on earth once you really start releasing fear and know that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is always supporting us. And once you take complete responsibility for everything in your life, and that doesn't mean blaming you, no blame. So let us begin to let that peace, that love reign, heaven reign in our lives. And let us begin it this very day. And so it is.